Before I start this video, if you're new to Trinity Format, this deck profile will probably make no sense at all. But if you're interested in learning about the format, our good friend TCG Theory has made an introductory video that's linked in the card in the corner. And with that, on to the video. Hello everybody, my name is Jeff, and today I'm inviting you to steal this deck. Today we've got Ignister lined up. Ignister is a deck that I've been toying with since its release, but before the new support, it was kind of an inconsistent mess that just sometimes got away with games by burning people out with Fire Phoenix. Now it's a consistent mess that gets away with burning people with Fire Phoenix, but can also toolbox into pretty much any option you might want. So with that being said, let's get right into the cards here. So first of all, we've got our starters, which are Achichi, Picari, and I Meet You. Achichi, when normal or special summoned, adds any level 4 or lower Ignister, which includes Picari. Picari, when normal or special summoned, adds any I spell or trap, which includes I Meet You, and I Meet You is a Rhoda, which can add either. So these three all funnel into each other, and with enough summons, the entire lineup of their cards. The rest of the Ignisters we've got here are not starters on their own, but they're still very helpful. Bururu is our tuner. When it's normal or special summoned, it sends an Ignister from the deck to the graveyard. The usual target for this is Gusari, just because it's the only one that really does something, but sometimes you might want to dump one of the other ones if you've got an idol reborn to bring it back. When it's used as synchro material, it will summon the other material that was used. So if you have a Picari left over on board, you can summon Bururu, go into their synchro, and then summon the Picari again for another search, which is really helpful. Doyon is probably the best of the other Ignisters. When it's normal or special summoned, it adds an Ignister monster from your graveyard back to your hand, which is already amazing. But then, if you use it as link material for any Cyburst link, it adds an I spell trap back from your graveyard to your hand. So Doyon just really makes them infinitely more recurable. Hayari is a bit of an outlier here. It doesn't do anything when normal summoned. But if you already control an Ignister, you can special summon it for free. And then its other effect is you can tribute another Cyburst monster to add a level 5 or higher Ignister, which is the ones Achichi cannot get. And then if you also happen to tribute a Link monster, you get to add Ai's Ritual. So it acts as a pre-preparation of rites, adding both of these, or it can add these three cards, which are all pretty good. And I'm going to tell you about now. Gusari is basically a big stick, but it's a pretty good one. If a Link monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon it from your hand. That includes opponent's Link monsters, which is pretty interesting. And then, if your Link monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle while it's on field, it inflicts damage equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. A pretty nice Flame Wingman effect, though it almost never comes up because you're usually just dumping this to the grave. Its final effect, which is usually the most useful, is that if an attack is declared involving a Link monster you control and an opponent's monster, you can make them both 3,000 attack, which sounds like it just makes them crash, which it usually does, but Ignister's also got a few tricks that make that more helpful. Gachiriad Ignister is a hilariously unfair card. The first time each Cyburst monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect each turn, it is not destroyed. So this is just broad protection for your whole board. It's a massive shield. Now, this would be pretty awful if it couldn't summon itself, but it does. What it does is it can target a Cyburst effect monster you control, negate its effects permanently, and then summon itself. And finally, its third effect is that if it's linked off, you can target a monster you control and make it unaffected by opponent's card effects. So this thing is just a massive shield that protects everything and kind of creates dumb game states when you find it. You kind of can't go for it because it's a purely defensive card, but when you do have it, it's amazing. And finally, Danmari Ignister is just Battle Fader. When an attack is declared involving your Ignister monster, you can special summon it from your card and negate the attack. So this isn't super amazing, but what it does is it takes boards where you'd normally get run over and turn them into boards where you end up with like 2 monsters left over, and then you can just go into a big Link monster, which is practically the next win con. Water Leviathan is the ritual, and honestly, I'm mostly running this because it's funny, but when it is summoned by Ai's Ritual, it bounces all monsters with 2300 or less attack. And then it has two other effects concerning battle. It can half the attack of an opponent's monster, and also set it to 0 with a different effect. Eyes Ritual is a great ritual spell, all things considered. It can banish Ignisters from graveyard if you use one. Now, Idol Reborn is just the absolute bread and butter of the deck. This is what you usually want to search with Picari. It is a quick play Monster Reborn. It just targets an Ignister and special summons it. It also has a second effect that when an attack is declared involving two monsters, you can banish Idol Reborn and another card from your hand to add an eye spell trap other than itself from your graveyard or banished back to your hand. So it adds another layer of recursiveness, and most of the time you're going to be using this to recur Tie Strike, which is a hilarious card. What Tie Strike does is it sets the attack of your monster equal to the attack of the opponent's monster, and if either of those monsters are destroyed, the controller takes damage equal to their attack, actually original attack, not attack on field. So, if you've got something like Picari or Achichi that only has 800 attack, and you attack into an opponent's Blue Eyes with this, they're taking 3000 burn and you're only taking 800, and both the monsters are destroyed. But it's even better than that. It's got a second effect. It can banish itself from grave to protect an Ignister, so you can protect that Achichi and take no damage. Ignister Island is their field spell. As far as field spells go, this actually isn't very good, and we only run it because it's searchable by their Link one and enables like a single combo. But what it does is, if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Ignister monster from your hand, but for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon monsters with the same original attribute by its effect. It also recycles itself from graveyard if your opponent removes it and for some reason you still need it. It can banish an Ignister to add it back. Eyeshadow is probably the worst of the spell trap lineup, but it has just enough scenarios that I find myself running it. What it does is it's a continuous trap that targets an Ignister you control. It gains 800, and all your opponent's monsters must attack it if able. Which isn't great, but it just kind of leads to some funny situations where you force them into attacking into Tie Strike and they just die. It also has an extra little bread and butter effect here that if your opponent removes it face up, you just get to draw a card for free. So it's very low risk. Now that we're done with the Ignisters, I'll move on to generic Cybers cards that this deck just loves. Format Skipper can copy. It can change its name to Dark Infant to summon Dark Infant. Should probably go over Dark Infant by now. When it's Link summoned, it adds Island. That's all it does. This other effect never matters. It's just really good for being a Link one that lets you summon 2 Ignisters in a turn. That's pretty much what it does. And then when Format Skipper is used as Link monster, it adds a level 5 or higher Cybers monster, which is these 4. Most of the time, you want to add either Danmari or Gachiri. Gasari doesn't do much in hand, you usually want to dump it, and Wather Leviathan needs the ritual spell, obviously. Lady Debug adds a level 3 or lower Cybers, which is Achichi. The reason I'm not running more of this is because it actually doesn't start anything on its own. Ignister can't turn that Achichi search into anything that turn. Balancer Lord is, it's an extra normal summon, right? But curiously, in this deck, you can actually trigger the banished effect with Idol Reborn, and sometimes that's relevant. One of the fun things about this deck is every effect is like somehow relevant in the weirdest way, except for like Dark Infant's second effect. It just moves. Mathmech Sigma is it's actually a foolish target. You might notice we're not actually on Foolish Burial, but we've got a few ways to dump it. When there's no monsters in your extra monster zone, you can special summon it from your hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. Notably, it is not banished if it's overlaid for an Xe monster, which we're on a few of. Code Generator is the foolish I was actually talking about here. This can be used as link material in your hand for a Code Talker, and when you do, you can send a Cybers monster with 1200 or less attack. Mathmech Sigma only has 1000 attack, and the other target we run here is Prohibit Snake. This also, in a pinch, can get Picari and Achichi into rotation, which is just amazing. Code Radiator is the worst of the Code Talker, like, micro links here. It has the same effect that you can use it as link material in hand, but all it does is change the attack of a monster your opponent controls to 0, which is kind of something Ignisters don't want with Tie Strike. Sometimes you find yourself not attacking it, not even activating it. It also negates the effect, which is why you would want to activate it, but it's really kind of meh. Microcoder is the final of the mini coders. Has the same effect to be used as link material in hand, but when it is, it searches a Signet spell trap, which includes Signet Backdoor, which kind of protects a monster you've got, and then also searches one. It's really nice, and sometimes people forget that it lets the monster you target attack directly, which sometimes sneaks games. Signet Conflict is a counter trap. When a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated while you control a Code Talker, you can negate the activation and banish it, and your opponent cannot activate cards with the same name until the end of the next turn. It's a little situational because the monster you go into, Code Talker itself, is pretty easy to run over, so sometimes it ends up dead, but when Signet Conflict is good, it's very good. The final target for Microcoder is Signet Mining, which sends a card from your hand to the graveyard to add a level 4 Cyber monster, level 4 or lower. So it just adds pretty much any card in the deck. Another engine we're on here is Mathematician. It's another foolish. It can dump Sigma to make a Synchro 7, which is Wind Pegasus. It can also dump Dandelion, which is a 1-card Fire Phoenix, which is quite good. Fire Phoenix, if you don't know what it does, it's got a few effects. When it attacks, it deals burn damage equal to its attack rather than battle damage, which means if you attack a defense position monster, you're still getting 2,300 damage off. It's also combos with Tie Strike. If its attack goes higher, it burns for more. If it's destroyed by a card effect, any card effect, not your opponent's, you can destroy a monster your opponent controls. And then, during the next standby phase, after it's been linked summoned, it reborns itself from the graveyard. It rises from the ashes. It's just a fantastic card and is usually fairly safe to go into because of its revival effect. So we run Mathematician for that, even though Dandelion is 1 point in Lightning Vortex format. We've got some token generators here. One-time passcode is great. It enables some silly combos. Spool code is either the best card in the deck or the worst. It's Scapegoat for no points, but you have to have your opponent attack while you have 3 or more Cyberse monsters in your grave. Luckily, the Achichi or Picari combo puts 3 Cyberse monsters in your grave, so it should be live as long as your opponent attacks. And the entire rest of this deck is pretty much just staples, which is kind of awesome to be able to run this many staples because your engine is just that consistent. A few things of note is your Torrential Tribute will activate Fire Phoenix, the effect when it's destroyed. And I'm also on Needle Sealing because the Achichi or Picari combo lands you on 2 monsters, Dark Infant and one of these 2. So if your opponent summons 2 cards, it's live and you get to sack 2 monsters that really weren't doing anything on board for your opponent's whole play. It's kind of amazing. So finally here, we can go over the extra deck. Geomathmech Magma is a Synchro 8 for Sigma if you have a level 4 on board. And it has 2,500 attack, and when it destroys a monster by battle, you can target 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them, which is just nice removal, and it can kind of be a blowout sometimes. It's got a second effect that's only relevant if you're playing Mathmech. Wind Pegasus is our Synchro 7, which mostly comes up with Bururu, but also with Mathematician sending Sigma. And what it does is you can destroy spell traps your opponent controls up to the number of Ignister monsters you control. It counts itself, so you're guaranteed 1, but with Bururu summoning back Picari, you usually get 2, which is just very nice, 2 non-targeting spell trap removals for free. And on top of that, it has a second effect in the graveyard. If a card you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can banish it from the graveyard to target a card your opponent controls and shuffle it into the deck. Spins are just great, which is also why we're running Castell in our rank 4 lineup here. Castell spins are just great. Light Dragon at Ignister is a card that's seen a good bit of play just in rank 4 toolboxes, but it's even better in Ignister because it's a name and you can actually use the second effect. If a monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, or would be destroyed by a card effect, you can detach a material from it instead. You can detach a material from it to destroy face-up monsters your opponent controls up to the number of at Ignister you control, which of course counts itself, so minimum 1, but since we're playing Ignister, you can sometimes get more, which is why it's so great. And then, if another Cyberse monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon a Link monster from your graveyard. I usually forget about this effect because usually you end up going into Fire Phoenix or Light Dragon and not both, but I mean, it is there. Tornado Dragon is good for when you can't get into Wind Pegasus. It's very rare that you won't be able to, but it's just a good card to have. Code Talker is the target for our microcoders. It doesn't do much on its own, but if it points to anything, it can't be destroyed, which is very nice. Dark Infant, it adds Island. I've explained this already. Decode Talker Extend is our dark target for I Meet You. I didn't mention before that it needs to reveal a Cyberse monster in your hand or extra deck to add one of the same attribute, which is why we're running this for a dark target for Doyon and Danmari. It also burns you in the end phase if you don't summon it, but I've almost never had that actually make a difference. Usually you either are winning the game or you're losing it. 2,300 points of burn is not an issue. Decode Talker Extend actually does have some interesting synergy with Ignister, though. What you can do is you can attack with it, then attack with an Ignister using Tie Strike, but not protect it, so you're crashing and getting a bunch of burn damage off. And then Decode Talker Extended gets a second attack because your monster was destroyed. Fire Phoenix is just absolute bread and butter monster. This is what I built the deck around initially before the new support was released, because it's just that good. It burns, it destroys stuff if you try and out it, and then it comes back. Landphalankus is just here for one specific combo for Mathematician making Fire Phoenix. You don't need it most of the time. Lingeribo is the Link 1 Ignister we're released with, and it is pretty much inferior to Dark Infant, but it does it contribute itself to negate a trap card, which is pretty nice. It protects you sometimes. And it also uses a level 4 or lower Cyberse rather than just an Ignister, which is occasionally relevant for Mud Skipper. It can also bring itself back by tributing an Ignister that was special summoned from the extra deck, but Lingeribo is just so much worse than any Ignister you're special summoning from the extra deck that I think I've only used this effect once against Trap Tricks. Security Dragon is an interesting pick here. It's a bit techy, but we have a lot of link arrows that point down. Code Talker, Fire Phoenix, the other link monsters that I haven't gotten to yet all point down. And it can bounce a monster your opponent controls while it's co-linked, which sometimes just lets you sneak in damage. Shooting Code Talker is mostly just here to be a water target for I Meet You. I have gotten its draw effect off once or twice, but you usually don't want to actually make this. It is notable that its material is only Cyberse monsters and not Cyberse effect monsters, so you can make this summon 1 off Spool Code or with one-time passcode, and that's just totally valid. Unlike, actually, Fire Phoenix only takes Cyberse as well, which is part of why it's so good, but unlike Transcode Talker, which needs effect monsters. Next, we're on Topologic Bomber Dragon. This is also a bit gimmicky, but the deck kind of wants a Link 4. Normally it'd be access code, but we're pressed for points since Dandelion got put to 1 point. I couldn't find anything to really cut for it. So Topologic is great. It nukes the board if a monster is special summoned to its link point, and we've got Buddy Force, Idol Reborn, plenty of ways to trigger this on your opponent's turn, and just whenever you want. It also has another Flame Wingman effect, where it deals damage equal to your opponent's monster's original attack when it destroys something, which is just nice because this deck kind of wants to burn for damage in the battle phase. And finally, Transcode Talker is probably the best of the code talkers other than Access Code. While it's co-linked, they both gain 500 attack and cannot be targeted. And it also summons back a Link 3 or lower Cyberse Link monster to the zone it points to. So what this does is, you link Code Talker off for it, then it summons Code Talker back, and you've got a, I believe, 2300 Code Talker that cannot be destroyed or targeted, and a 2800 Transcode Talker that just cannot be targeted. It's a pretty nice lock. Finally, the side deck is worth looking at. I've got both some actual side deck cards here and some interesting techs that you might want to add to your own list. Signet Storm is an interesting card. In addition to giving any linked monster 500 attack or defense, linked is not a link monster, it is not co-linked. It is any monster that is pointed to by a link arrow or is pointing with a link arrow. So if you've got Code Talker pointing to just some random monster in your main deck, they both gain 500. But the interesting effect here is, if you take 2,000 or more battle or effect damage, you can shuffle the face-down cards in your extra deck, excavate the top card, and if it is a Cyberse Link monster, special summon it. So we're on 10 Cyberse Link monsters here, and 5 non-Cyberse Link monsters. I believe these are all Cyberse. Yes, they are. So you've got a 2/3 chance of just summoning a Link monster for free when that triggers, and I Meet You's burn is 2300, so it triggers it. Earth Golem at Ignister and I Love Fusion are interesting cards, but I put them in the side because they're not relevant unless your opponent is summoning Link monsters. I Love Fusion is a pretty standard fusion spell, but it can use a Link monster your opponent controls as Link material if your material is an Ad Ignister monster. So that summons Earth Golem, which materials are 1 Cyberse and 1 Link monster. Earth Golem itself is really average. You can also run Diplexer Chimera, which also has similar materials, but Earth Golem is just slightly more useful for being a name and for floating into a Cyberse. I Challenge You, which was possibly shafted more than any other card here in its name, Give Us Back Mono I Mono, is interesting. It's a continuous trap that gives all your Ignisters an Armades effect, which in theory has some use, but I've never actually had it come up, so it's sitting in the side for now. It also lets you target a Cyberse monster with 2300 attack in your graveyard and special summon it if an Ignister monster is destroyed by battle. So it gives you some weird floating redundancy, but it's just like generally worse than Eyeshadow or Tie Strike or anything else you'd want to search off Picari. Got a couple of hand traps that you can side in for the ones that are already in here. Spell Shattering Arrow and Fairy Wind are both great mass spell removal. They're great in any decks that's on like field spells or continuous spells, and it's also great into pendulum scales. Fragrant Storm is a fun option for plants. It's not a blowout by any means, but it destroys a plant on the field and then lets you draw a card. So it's a +1 removal. If you happen to draw exactly Dandelion, which is a plant, it even lets you draw 1 more card. Mistaken Accusation is a bit of a weird one, but it has an application. Like in the artwork, this card's primary use is preventing floating. What it does is if your opponent has more cards in their hand and field than you, you can target a card on the field, and neither player can activate cards with that name or their effects for the rest of the duel except that target. When that target goes to the graveyard, it's not the same card as far as Mistaken Accusation is concerned, so it won't be allowed to activate float effects. This is also very funny into Blue Eyes, which is kind of a viable deck here. It's actually really good, Blue Eyes. Mistaken Arrest is Mistaken Arrest. It prevents both players from adding cards to their deck to their hand except by drawing them until the end of your next turn. This is always a weird one to side, because Ignister are the ones that want to be doing all the searching. You really don't want to lock yourself behind Mistaken Arrest unless it's absolutely going to win the matchup. Prohibition is prohibition. Every once in a while, a deck comes out that's just on a total bomb that you don't want them to see. Like, this deck's not a great example of something you'd want to prohibit, but calling prohibition on Picari would be pretty painful. Dimensional Barrier is great if you see pretty obviously what play your opponent's going to go for. You can stun it for the turn. It's very good into Pendulum, but also useful against Xyz and Synchros. And Fusions. Fusions, you actually get them to waste the Fusion spell. Same with Rituals, too. I mean, it's good into... It's kind of good into everything, but it stays in the side. I don't know why. So, that is the deck. Now, we're going to go into some matches, and I'm going to play it and just explain what I'm doing, because this deck's got lots of little tech that kind of only comes up while you're playing it. It's really cool in that sense, because it's kind of a jack-of-all-trades deck. Alright, so we're up against Deg here. They're a bit of a wild card player who's kind of always around. We definitely do want to go first. Jay, you never quite know what they'll bring. It's usually something you've never seen before. Alright, so we've got a pretty good opening hand here. This is everything we could want. I'm going to show off the Picari opener here. Could also use Signet Mind and go for a Chi-Chi, but Picari is pretty good. So Picari adds I Meet You. And we don't even actually have to activate this now because we have Signet Mining, but I'm gonna go through the motions. Then I Meet You reveals Fire Phoenix to add a Chi-Chi. I think it's technically safer if you want to link into Dark Infant first. That'll tell you if you've got something that's going to disrupt this. But then Dark Infant adds Field Spell, which we can activate, and that summons a Chi-Chi. And you can also do this in reverse, starting with normal summon a Chi-Chi. In that case, a Chi-Chi just adds the Picari, and Picari can search whatever you want. So the only difference is you're getting a monster search versus a spell trap search. But the Chi-Chi search can also just grab a second Picari, so it kind of doesn't matter which is which. And then with the Balancer Lord in hand, this is really nice next turn. It's an easy rank 4. We've got all the setup we could want. So we're going to pass there, take 2300 from I Meet You. That's probably the biggest drawback, but it's, you know, there's an old saying that life points don't matter except for your last one, and that kind of rings true here. Ooh, Red Eye's Insight. Alright. We might be in for it. Probably should have summoned a Chi-Chi in defense position. Wasn't really thinking. It is good. Got nothing. Okay, they're just dumping Wyvern. That's fine. This is a good card. It summons a Red Eyes from graveyard, but also it's almost never live because of its restriction. So it's like, yeah, really a little strange on if you run it or not. And of course, Red Eyes Fusion doesn't need a normal summon, but that locks you from using its effect as well. So this could potentially deal quite a bit of damage. I hope they don't just one-tap us here. That'd be a little stupid. The other benefit of doing the line in reverse, starting with the Chi-Chi, is you've got the Chi-Chi in graveyard, which can keep you from taking battle damage with this second effect here. Because if it's destroyed before damage calculation, then damage calculation doesn't happen. So they're dumping Meteor and Black Dragon, so it looks like they're going for the burn one. Perfectly reasonable. It's got the least bricks, more or less. The others require you to run Skull Servant or, you know. So Black Comet Dragon is going to burn us for probably 1200, maybe a little bit more if they go for a high burn option. Okay, yeah, they went for Darkness Metal, so it's 1400. And then they're going to attack for a bunch of damage. But also, since they weren't able to go wide, it's really nice here. We've got a monster left over, are going to. Alright, attacking infant. So we're looking a little dangerous here, but I think we got this. Could actually potentially go into Top Logic Bomber Dragon here, which is pretty funny. Signet Minding's Dump Dandelion is like the best two cards in this deck. You can do pretty much anything with that. You just gotta think of the best way to go about it here. And Imperm is pretty much another great draw. So let's take a look at the extra deck here. So Topologic Bomber is really funny. It'll destroy their whole field, and then we can attack, obviously. Yeah, there's no reason not to open with Signet Mining, even if that's not what we're going to go for. In this case, we've actually got all the Ignister we want, so the single best thing to add is probably Prohibit Snake. This is a fun hand trap that turns every Link monster into Grand Mole, but better. And Dandy's going to give us 2 tokens. Topologic is only on Special Summon, right? Yeah, Special Summoned. So we can't trigger that with Balance or Lord Normal Summon. Oh, they've got something. Alright, let's see it. Blind Obliteration. Yeah, that's pretty good here. Alright, so unless they roll Snake Eyes, they're ripping everything. If they do roll Snake Eyes, if Chi-Chi lives. Regardless, we've got this Bouncer Lord Picari play, which is pretty nice. We just have to hope we don't get burned out, seeing as it's going to put us on only 1,000. Or actually, we could use Island first and not have to take the burn, which is also pretty good. So, Picari, here we can add whatever we want. So, Meteor Black Comet Dragon is going to special summon back probably Red Eyes, maybe Red Eyes Impact, but probably Red Eyes. It's a little annoying because all our extra deck monsters are 2,300 and Red Eyes is 2,400. So it could be tricky, but we've got Eyeshadow up, which is pretty nice. So I think we do just add Idol Reborn here and keep the advantage loop going. Normal. We're going to want to overlay into Light Dragon. Fantastic card, amazing removal, makes breakfast for you, you know, the works. Only destroys face up, which is a little annoying, but should be fine here. Oh, and whoops, I didn't mean to send it to extra deck, I meant to move it to extra deck, because you should definitely, most of the time when you're playing Ignister, you want to summon your monsters to the extra deck, because it keeps Island live. Not that Island's effect. God damn it. You saw nothing. Not that Island's effect comes up much outside of like set combos in the start of turn, but it's just kind of good habit unless you're against like Cyber Dragon or someone running the Gizmech that cares about extra deck. So we'll go to battle. We'll attack into the set card. It can't be much, I don't think. If it is something scary, I'll be really genuinely surprised here. Oh, it's actually Purple Poison. Yeah, that actually does something. That will force Light Dragon's first effect. So, yeah, this is fine. We've still got Eyeshadow, so they're not going to run over Light Dragon so easily. And we've got some set cards here. So this is definitely a bit sketchy, but I think we can turn it around. Ignister kind of has a tendency of going into, slightly sketchy territory and then just completely turning it around with a couple good tie strikes. For Form Pal. Form Pal Trump Girl. Fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using materials you control as fusion materials. Okay, that's good. I believe a Perform Pal plus a dragon makes one of theirs. I just don't remember which. Yep, the effect's good. I doubt they can make anything with more than 3,000 attack. Yeah, Gatling Ghoul. Whew. That's really scary. That would have probably burnt us for game if it weren't for this imperm we have here. So we are safe for now. So it's probably good to ask for end of main here because they can go straight from main to end phase, which would circumvent eyeshadow. Now it must attack if able, which means crashing into Light Dragon. Alright. Got an Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, but that doesn't really do much. If we can here, we want to go wide for max damage. I'm just trying to figure out what that is. It's probably summon back Bakari, search with it for maybe another Idol Reborn, but probably Eyeshadow? Or, no, we already have Eyeshadow. I meant I Meet You. Oh, they're using Wyvern in the end phase. I guess they... No, they normal summoned... They normal summoned Trump Witch. So, yeah, they can't use Wyvern here, because they normaled. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, Wyvern's a really good card, but the only way you can trigger it is, like, if you're not playing. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon's good. They don't get anything off that that helps them not die there, I don't think. Unless they add Dissolver, they might be on Dissolver. But even still, I think that has to attack, and I have to attack into a Pendulum monster to trigger it. Revo. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can add Revo. So in the end phase here, we're going to Idol Reborn, summoning Bakari. Bakari's effect. We can have whatever we want. Normally at this point of the game, your opponent would have something on the board for you to tie strike, and that's where you get all your damage. Ignister's actually a little awkward when your opponent isn't putting up much. But I think we can assemble lethal here. As long as I just don't completely flounder it. Yeah, Bakari is actually the highest attack main deck Ignister, so I think we need to grab a second Idol Reborn for this to work. So now we're going to Idol Reborn again. This is summon one. We're going to summon a Bakari. Use its effect. And we can add I meet you for more damage, right? Yeah, but if I meet you isn't lethal here, then we're dead, which is why I'm really thinking about it because we're at too low life points for you know, to survive to the end phase unless we make whatever it's got. Let me check the extra deck. So shooting Code Talker only makes attacks on monsters. We can, in fact, make whatever we add, which will save us. If we add Doyon here, we can make Decode Talker extend, which is pretty fun. If we add a Chi-Chi, we can make Fire Phoenix. If we add an Earth Ignister, we make Transcode Talker, which is less good than the other options. Can also, since we're on Summon 1 here, we can make Wind Pegasus, but that's less damage. So yeah, this is a little tough. See, we've got 3,000 plus 24. I don't think we can actually kill. A little surprising, but it's fine. We'll just, in that case, probably have to add Tie Strike and just, just basically stall out. They can't attack into us without dying. Hmm. I might have been able to do something using Balancer Lord there. A fun little interaction is Idol Reborn's Graveyard Effect can trigger Balancer Lord, but I'm just like, I'm not sure where I'd get monsters with enough attack here. Guess if I added a Chi-Chi and then a Chi-Chi added another Ignister with enough attack, but they all have low attack besides Bakari, so I just don't think it really worked. So main phase 2, it's pretty good to make a link here because that makes Prohibit Snake live. I kind of searched at a dumb time, but that would also mean linking off Light Dragon, which has Eyeshadow on it. So I think we just set and pass. Feel fairly confident since this deck's already burnt its burn fusions here. Meteor Black Comet and Gatling Ghoul. They are going to open up with Revo that they searched. Yep, it's good. We don't have any real disruption here, which is what's scary. If they have like a lightning storm, they can just crush us by destroying all the monsters. And then all we're stuck with is a back to the front. Yeah, games like this almost make me wish I had a second copy of Light Dragon just to put the protection effect back up. But this deck is absolutely squeezed for points. Oh yeah, I forgot about Light Dragon's Graveyard effect. That would have, or Light Dragon's third effect actually summoned Dark Infant there, so we might have had another way to lethal. I think it was still short just because everything has such low attack. Like if I had summoned a Fire Phoenix earlier in the game, that absolutely would have worked. But, just didn't have quite enough there. They did see us search Tie Strike, but despite that, a lot of people will just attack into it, thinking they have game. It's really pretty funny. And actually, if they do summon anything in attack position here, they're forced to attack into Light Dragon. Putting Phantasm in scale. It's interesting. So it's a 0 to 8. So they can pendulum summon whatever they want, but they've got to out the board, or they're just gonna die to attacking in to Light Dragon. Yep, the scales are good. I'll be upset here if they run like a second copy of Gatling Ghoul. That would be pretty wild. I can't see why you do that. My God, are they actually on a second copy of Gatling Ghoul? No, okay, it looks like they're just going for Aether. Okay, Aether's gonna banish Light Dragon, that's fine. Lagging a little bit. They are no longer compelled to attack, but something tells me they just might. Yeah, isn't level 6 Dragon plus Skull Servant something? Or Summon Skull, I mean. Maybe. We'll see what they make. Yeah, they linked off Trump Girl, so it's going to be a Perform Pal fusion. Or they synchroed it off. Fused it off. Synchro, fusion, link. Same thing, basically. Z's are special. They're on a second Gatling Ghoul. What? So, uh, what? That's lethal, isn't it? Lethal. Yeah, that's lethal. Yeah, 200 plus. Okay, yeah. Uh, GG. I hope you all enjoyed the video. In the interest of keeping it less than an hour, I've only included the one game, but I've created the Trinity Outtakes playlist, which contains all the games I didn't use. So if you want to watch me lose, win against Lost World in a like hour-long game, then that's the place to go. Thank you, and have a great day.